Policy Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Vice President Friedson and Council Member Katz. Today's agenda, we are going to make one slight change, and I apologize for the late notice, but we're actually going to do procurement first today. And so, Mr. Shetty, would you like to join us with your team? And I think Mr. Mee, I'm turning it over to you, right? Okay. Okay, great. Perfect. We will turn it over to you to go through the packet and then ask some questions.
Okay. Good morning. Naeem Mia, Legislative Analyst for Council Central Staff. In front of you today is the FY24 Recommended Operating Budget for Procurement. It's a relatively small budget, but it's complicated, which is why there's two of us, including myself and Dr. Fragers, covering it. As a quick overview, the total increase for the FY24 budget is about $100,000, 2.6% increase in personnel, FTEs, and a 5.2% increase in the operating expenses. Really no major issues with their budget. We looked at their vacancies. Director Shetty can give an update as to where they are currently with their vacancies. Just a quick note, there was a mid-year position reclassification, essentially downgrading an M2 to an M3 to fulfill a position. And there are currently 8 vacancies, or at least as of March 3rd, 2023. So again, Director Shetty, I can turn it over to him to cover those vacancies and can proceed with the rest of the items.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for accommodating me. So yes, we have a handful of vacancies, three of which have actually been lapsed for savings. But other than that, and then there's one on here that was actually an error in Oracle, so shouldn't have been here to begin with. One part-time position and an administrative aid position are actually being reclassified into an IT support position because the type of administrative help we need now is not like it used to be. It's much more in the IT space. One position actually where the candidate has accepted the offer made and is about to start on May 8th, so that's already filled. And then we have 2 positions that we are looking to, one of which is a part-time, looking to advertise and then hire for.
Great. Do people want to ask questions about vacancy, or just let Mr. go through the whole packet and
we
come
can go
back?
through the whole packet
Okay.
and then come back.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, the other items, there's in the packet, there's an update on an initiative that was planned several years ago before the pandemic. There's been changes in that initiative, mostly in order to fulfill vacancies and recruit new staff. The department has been aggressive in that recruitment effort over the this past fiscal year. So we can give an update on that. But other than that, there are no major cost changes or policy issues. These are all minor, or they're all being recommended as approved. We're talking about FY23 compensation, some technical adjustments. So Council staff's recommendation overall is to approve the budget as recommended by the CE, and there are no items for the rec list, essentially.
Director Shetty, do you have anything else you would like to tell us about the procurement department before we start with questions?
I mean, the only thing I can say is last year we hired 8 people because we were very short-staffed. And this year, those 8 people have started to build some steam. They've learned how procurement in the county works. Just yesterday, I saw a procurement that was completed in 48 days, which is a month and a half, which compared to like the nearly 11 months it used to take us when we were short-staffed, really just goes to show you the difference between being staffed and not being staffed. And again, this procurement wasn't for the Office of Procurement, it was for one of the county departments. So I really feel like the investment that the county makes in this office actually helps all the other departments in the county, and there's a certain value in the efficiency that we can create for them by being quick.
Great. Council Vice President Friedson, did you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you for all of the great work that you have been and continue to do. We really do appreciate it. We had this conversation in communications, and I think procurement is another example of whether it's a centralized operation or whether it's a decentralized operation. I think at times we have kind of done a little bit of both, and I'm not sure that's the best strategy. I think you got to kind of pick your game plan and you got to execute your game plan. And we've kind of done a little bit of everything. And rather than making major changes, we've just kind of layered on different philosophies to existing bureaucracy. And I don't know that that always works. Could you talk a little bit about the changes that you have made and how your centralized procurement office is interfacing with the using agencies and what, if any, procurement-related personnel that they have in their offices and departments?
So by charter, procurement here is supposed to be centralized. But at best, I would describe it as being center-led, which means there are contract administrators in each department. In fact, there are more of them, there are of us, who do a lot of work for their department as it relates to procurement. And then my office makes sure that the way they've done it is in compliance with county laws and regulations. I have restructured the office actually very significantly during COVID. What I did is optimized it for what we do, which is previously we had staff. The best way I could describe it is we were throwing bodies at problems. There was not a very good arrangement of how these individuals worked or interfaced with the departments. Many worked with many different departments, and that created a slight dysfunction just because they were more attached to the paperwork than to the actual mission of the department they were serving. What we've done since is reduced bottlenecks in terms of approvals, and having a relatively new team, as I alluded to having hired 8 new specialists, I needed more managers to be able to push these solicitations out. And we've also created a structure where managers within the operations part of procurement are responsible for specific departments. So this way, if you're a department head, you know who your manager is, and the staff that work for them will be catering to your department specifically. I hope that makes sense. It's very procurement-y in the way we are structured. Sure. But the idea is, rather than just throwing bodies at work, we're now assigning people to departments so that they're much more abreast of what is going on in their space. The managers have a lot more accountability to those departments, and work can be done more quickly.
Can I just jump in for 1 second?
Please.
Because I think, this issue came up when we were doing the PIO's office. I think in the future, could we get organizational charts?
Yes, I was actually fumbling through.
I know, no, I was too, because I was like, I think when we have these conversations, having organizational charts would be really beneficial to understand that structure, and then you can walk us through how you've changed things or how you plan to. So sorry.
Yeah, and I'll take it one step further. Like in this case, I think and I would like to recommend maybe perhaps if the chair is willing for us to come back to this question. I'd like to see not only the organizational chart of the department, but including the departments themselves, the using departments, and who within the using department is interfacing with the individuals or individual in the procurement office. Because it would be helpful for us to know if you are staffing up because you didn't have enough staff to do procurements, and at certain points in time we were leaning on department personnel, we should know that, because if there's a vacancy in one of those positions, that might not be needed anymore because we have actually solved the problem, which was the fact that you didn't have it. And I think we don't talk about these issues in a way that would actually allow us to solve the problem. It's not clear to me. You have been given full control over procurement process and your particular department. But it's not clear to me that you've been given control over everybody who's involved in procurement in county government and coming up with what is the most efficient, effective way to do procurement across all of county government. And I think that's what we really need to do, particularly as we are, we've heard about this grand restructuring that never has happened. That, to me, would be part of, that type of restructuring. Because, again, I do feel like we have a decentralized, centralized, non-centralized system that you're calling center-led, but your version of center-led seems a lot more intentional than I feel like it actually is. You could be right, and I would love to be proven wrong, and you can show me an org chart that makes tons of sense. But I think that, at least to me, remains to be seen. So just quick question then beyond that. So there are 8 vacancies currently. You have filled 8 positions.
Yes.
So were there 16 vacancies and now you've filled 8? How many vacancies were there last year at this time?
There were more than 16. We were very lean at that point, almost to the point of crisis. We've had to very deliberately staff up post-COVID to make sure that we can handle all the post-COVID. During COVID, there was a massive backlog of things that never went through procurement because people were just extending things, just trying to make do with what they had. The volume of work has increased, and I'm glad to be staffed up to be able to handle that now. But yeah, just a year ago, we were nowhere near where are now in staffing. But I would say, and again, I don't know that we have it in front of us, but last year there were at least 9 or 10 vacancies above and beyond what we're seeing right now. We had basically 4 manager positions open last year, and this is not a very big team. We only have like 5 managers.
Got it. Okay, and then I just want to make sure on page 3 of the staff report, the chart of the 8 vacant positions, there's no headers for the chart. So could you I just think it's important that we know what each of these columns mean.
Got it. Okay. So yes. So these are the positions that we have vacant. One of them, the manager 3 position, actually is, we're looking at page 3, right? Mm-hmm. The manager 3 position was just an error. It should not even be there. That position isn't available. It's not funded. You can see the $0 next to it, all the way on the right. But for the other positions, you're looking at a few positions that show a long, like the 3,000 days or whatever.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, I'm assuming I know what each of these mean, but the first is the job title, the second is the number of days open, the third is what?
The years.
The number of years.
Translate to.
Right, and then that's the budgeted amount as recommended in this budget.
Yes. And so if we ignore the first column with the days, because that's not very helpful, and just focus on the years, I think it's easier to look at that. Mm-hmm. The positions that you see at the top there, which show many, many years, it's not that they were vacancies in procurement. These were positions that departments gave us to hire for these category managers that I wanted to position. And then, of course, we tried to recruit and were unable to find suitable candidates. But the reason it shows 10 years is because DOT, who had given us that position, had that position vacant for like 6 years before they gave it to us. And now we've had it vacant for about 3 years, 2.5, because we tried to hire for it, we couldn't find anybody, and now we've lapsed those positions for savings.
Okay, so every one of these positions has been lapsed, except of course the $0 position that has been unfunded.
No, not every one of this has been lapsed. So I can talk through them one by one. I'll just go in the order they appear here so that it's more straightforward. And
we saw the total lapses over 400.
Over 400, and that really comes from the 3 performance management data analyst positions, 2 at the very top, the 10.12 and 5.25 years vacant, and then the 1.76 year vacant ones. So that's where the savings come from largely, as well as one of the specialists that we hired, but we underfilled them, so we got savings out of that, because instead of hiring them at the top of the bracket, we hired them actually at the very bottom.
So of the people on this chart, is it fully lapsed, partially lapsed, or not lapsed at all?
Fully lapsed would be the top one, the second one from the top, and the third one from the bottom. Those are fully lapsed.
Okay, so the 118,724, they're all the same amount of money, and you fully lapsed
They've all
that.
fully been lapsed.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't just eliminate those positions? I mean, they haven't been filled in 4 years.
So
In your department, they weren't filled in what?
2.5 years. So first, we did try to hire for them. We couldn't find the right type of candidate, and this is too important of a job to try to make do with less than ideal candidates. So I chose to leave them vacant until we could find the right folks. We were just about to advertise for them again when we found out that we needed to lapse them. Honestly, these are the types of positions that allow us to be more proactive in the departments, to the point you were making just before. These were folks who were going to be embedded in the departments. They were going to be understanding what the department's priorities, timelines, essentially allowing them to better stage what they're bringing to our office, having that procurement mindset in the departments before it even begins. I think this would have been a great step, a proactive step for us to take, because we've always typically been reactive. This would have been us trying to do something different in kind. If these positions were abolished, would things change? No, because we've not been able to implement this anyway, so things would remain the same. The only difference is if we did put these positions in place, I think we could be more efficient, we could be more proactive, and probably even more strategic in terms of finding savings. We could think about things like timing. Should we be sourcing things? Should we be going out to bid for something today, which is already very inflated? Wouldn't we rather just wait a year, and when those prices have calmed down, we then go to market? Otherwise, we lock in prices today that keep us committed to something because we timed our entry into the market poorly. Those are the types of insights that these people would have brought that could have led to bigger savings down the road.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
Do you know, I know you mentioned DOT as one of the departments. Do you know the other two departments that you were thinking these positions
Yes.
would be embedded in?
Yes, and it was very deliberate and specific. So one of them was going to be around construction. So it wasn't just DOT, it would have been vertical and horizontal construction. And it's actually it's a tall order. You're asking somebody to know a lot of different types of construction. And there's a lot of other labor nuances and things that they'd have to understand as well. The other was going to be in the IT space, which again, very similarly, you could have somebody just focus on applications, and then we've got consulting services and a whole lot of other things, hardware, a lot more to it. And the third was going to be around fleet and movement. So whether it's ABS's fleet or DGS's or even just the conveyors that sit at ABS, just anything that is being moved. Which was another space where we could afford to be more proactive. And this is the type of position that would make decisions like make versus buy analysis. Like, should we even be buying certain things? Couldn't we just be doing them in-house with our own, maybe hiring folks internally with those capabilities, like maintenance and things?
Director Shea, would it make sense, given that the you look like you're looking for very specific people to fill these roles, and given the budget that we're looking at the moment, would it make sense to try and hire for one of these positions, or and then see how it works, and if we're seeing the savings and
Right.
efficiencies, to then look at expanding that?
So for this year, it's being lapsed, unfortunately, anyway.
It's fully lapsed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not getting these people this year. But again, to the point from before, we've got these 8 new people. I do want to make sure that they have their feet fully underneath them, so it's okay that I can focus on these guys. Once I've got the house in order, I can do these aspirational things. Honestly, the idea behind bringing people with such broad purviews was that, just to see if a proof of concept works. But eventually, we'd let them whittle into the exact areas where they belong, where they can drive the most value. So this was honestly an attempt at what you're suggesting. But, we can always whittle it down, even make it even broader. We could have a person be responsible.
So here's my challenge is this. This is an administration that has no problem adding positions. In fact, they've almost added 1,000 new positions proposed over the last 5 budgets. I mean, no problem. Don't even give it a second thought. So I just don't understand the dynamic where we're so quick to add new positions and yet we're so slow to give up positions we're not using. Like, you can't have it both ways. We're so resistant to create new positions that we're unwilling to give up a position because 2 or 3 years from now, boy, once we have our feet under us and we get people staffed up, we're going to be ready to use that. We have like the worst of all worlds here. We are quick every budget to add at least 100 new positions, maybe 200. In some budgets, we've added more than that over the last 5 years. And yet, we won't give up a single position in a department because there could be a point at which down the road, once everything else is working perfectly and we fix every other problem, that we're going to start staffing this up. And I just don't think it's a way to operate. I mean, we're not going to use these positions at all this year anyway. It has no service impact at all. I would be comfortable eliminating all of them, and then you coming back with the organizational discussion with us over the course of the next year, explain to us how you're going to use new positions, get us to buy in on your philosophy of how this is going to save us money and, do services better and get a better bang for the buck for taxpayer dollars. And, I think we should also talk about the other positions that are here. I mean, we have ones that aren't lapsed
Yes.
that have been open for over 3 years, 2 of them over 3 years, and one almost a year. So,
Before we move on to the other position, I want to go to Councilmember
Please.
Katz.
Thank you and good morning. And let me say, as we begin, Ash, you know as well as I how impressed I've always been with procurement. When early on, when you first got here, Mark Elrich and I did the small business tour, and you literally fixed things within weeks, maybe even days. So I've always been impressed. I do agree that the organizational charts are going to be a help. This is getting a little bit more confusing, I guess, and it's necessary. And of course, we need the communication internally and to the public, which your department has done a very good job of winning and obviously want to do better. Having said all that, are you saying that the person that where these lapses have taken place, that they would have enough work for full-time work?
So this was work that these 3 positions that we lapsed is work that we've never done in Montgomery County government. Like, this would be a new concept here, this idea of procurement being embedded in the departments, having people who really oversee what's coming. The way it works right now is things come to us in a certain state. If we can work with it, we work with it. Otherwise, we return it to the department and say, no, you've got to add certain areas that are missing. It is an inefficiency that we've gotten accustomed to. It is just how we've always done things here, yet from my previous life coming in here, that is not how things are done. Hence, when I came here, I asked for these positions, which is why they're about as old as I am. It took a year to get them, so they're a year younger than me. But
You've weathered well.
all things considered.
Yeah.
And then, we unfortunately for us, went out on a hiring mission in the middle of COVID when we had the great resignation, whatever you called it, the great reevaluation happening. We just didn't get what I wanted, and it was one of those things where, since this was going to be new to the county, I didn't want to do it in a way that would make it look bad. Like, if I got the wrong candidates, it would never have worked. It was aspirational then. I didn't expect it to take this long to come to fruition, to be very honest with you. But then again, given where we are today, I am okay lapsing them, knowing that a brighter day is ahead. We're going to get to these types of aspirational things in the future, one way or the other. We just need to figure out how we get there.
I think the Vice President's suggestion is a good one, that we need to come back and visit with this, and hopefully I have a feeling the chair is going to agree with that as well. But I think for the moment, with this budget being, I always say that this is the worst budget we've ever had, and this is the worst budget we've ever had. I think that would make sense for this year, and then we shouldn't beat you up next year or during the discussions if you can show that we need the additional help. But for right now, I think that would be a logical step for us. That's right. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I just add one note to Mary Beckwith, Office of Management and Budget? When OMB came up with the lapse numbers, they were really sort of a calculation and not naming specific positions. And the idea was to give flexibility to the department. I remember when those conversations were had about these positions coming into being, and frankly, the argument that existed then still exists today. The types of issues that Ash mentioned with construction and IT procurements and fleet are enormously complex. There are so many different variables. It is not about just doing a bus contract. It's about, are we going to lease the buses? Are we going to finance the buses? I mean, the need is still there. So we specifically left it more vague and did not name positions. I mean, Ash, I think from a management perspective, has decided, well, this is probably where he would start. But I think leaving him some flexibility and to not have to wait another year would be a good idea.
I'm confused now, but I guess.
Yeah, okay, well, he's going to wait another year because he's recommending that they be lapsed for the year, unless I'm missing something here on these positions, right?
No, that was the understanding of the ask of me, was to lapse them for a year.
Yeah, for a year, okay. So there's no operational impact here at all in these positions. I'd like to talk about the other positions too and get a sense of what the timing is on that. But this speaks to the challenge and the problem from my perspective, because we have all these positions, some of which are funded and some of which aren't. We have 1,500 vacancies in county government, only 552 of them at the last request of this committee in a public setting are actually being actively recruited. So the lapse is a way that we actually don't make any changes. We don't determine operational impacts. We don't do the type of restructuring and reorganization that we've been hearing about for 5 years. And it's basically our cheat mode when it comes to budgeting. So I appreciate where you're coming from, and I think the council president also was trying to give the departments some deference to make decisions on what would have the most impact. It's hard for us to make those decisions from here, but frankly, those decisions aren't being made. The county executive and the chief administrative officer have not requested the departments really to do that work, have not required it. And so what is happening now is we're sitting on lots of vacancies that are unfunded and vacancies that are funded that are being used to find limited amounts of savings that don't amount to anything over a long period of time. They're short-term fixes. They're like sugar rushes. And then eventually they wear off, and as it's happening, we're getting fatter and fatter. And that, to me, that's the challenge. So at a certain point, like, we got to make a decision. We got to decide. Again, we can't add positions and keep positions that we're not using. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I can't explain to a taxpayer today of why we have a 10% tax increase, why we have 1,500 vacancies, and why we're adding 137 new positions. I can't explain why we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vacancies, and yet we've added hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new positions over the last 5 budgets. It's just not, it's not a reasonable response. So at a certain point, we got to do something.
But I just want to clarify for everyone. These 3 positions that we're already talking about, lapsing them for this year has already been taken into consideration for the budget. So we're not saving anything. Right. Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet, but
Let's
okay.
get to the next part.
I think the last conversation is, right. But it's
well,
it was very helpful. Yeah.
It's not true. Well, you are right for this year.
Year.
But we have 2 problems that we have to solve in this budget. One is a massive problem right now with a budget that really isn't balanced at all. It uses one-time resources for ongoing expenses. It is, I don't believe, even remotely sustainable. It has lots of problems. One is the problem right now of this budget and how to approve this budget and what we include in this budget. The second problem is that this budget is going to beget future budgets. Every budget is the reaction of prior actions. And if we eliminate these positions today, we will scrutinize the new positions that you come before us and talk through and explain moving forward. And that, to me, is the benefit. If we don't do that, this starts out in the base for next year, and then it gets taken as lapse, and we pretend like we've done something with a cut through lapse, which really isn't anything at all. So we don't find immediate savings today, but we start to set ourselves up on a different trajectory for moving forward, which does matter from my perspective.
All right. So I think the recommendation from the committee is to actually remove these positions and not just lapse them, and then to come back and speak to that in the future after you all have in procurement, you have the 8 new folks looking at how things are working, and then we can have further conversations on the organization. Is that?
Budgetarily, it's not going to make a difference for this year, as you've acknowledged. I think operationally, for me, it is a little bit of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? Because it took me forever to get these positions, and then it was heartbreaking when I couldn't fill them. But again, I didn't want to compromise, and that was maybe my fault, because we wouldn't be lapsing them today if we had, albeit unfit people in those positions. But that's not how I operate. That's not what I wanted, and so I made the right decision. Then I have no regrets about it. But my one regret is that I am going to have to go through the entire process that I went through to get these positions to exist in the first place, and then who knows what happens 2 years from now, and I might end up exactly where I am today. But again, that is one of those things where I think between Mary Beck and myself, we've tried to explain the importance of why these positions came to be. That importance isn't going to change. In all honesty, 50 years from now, I think there'll be more of those types of people than we'd be more proactive, hopefully, and not reactive the way we've always been. But I understand what you're saying. I get where you're coming from also, but I just wanted to put my position out there.
And I think if it was possible to, if you're determined to try to cut positions, maybe cut 2 and rely on Ash to manage the lapse, and then that would allow him the flexibility to maybe add the one position during the year, knowing he's got to take cuts somewhere else.
I just don't understand. It was so hard for you to get the new positions because the county executive and the chief administrative officer were unwilling to put new positions into the budget as they have in every other department. So that's a priority determination that the county executive and the chief administrative officer have within their purview. We have before us 137.2 new positions in this budget. They didn't exist. They don't exist. You're requesting that they will exist starting July 1st. We have hundreds of positions that have come to being in every single budget prior to that. So to me, like, if anything, this will help to make this more of a priority countywide because the new positions are what gets scrutinized. I would rather procurement have new positions next budget and there to be a dictate coming from the county executive and the CAO with support from the council to say, we are creating these new positions because this is a countywide priority to make procurement work better. That would be a much stronger and better message for the type of changes that I think you desperately want to make. Here, that's not really what's happening and what has happened. So I mean, I'll yield to colleagues on what they think, and I also think we need to decide on the other positions too.
Right, we do. We will get there. So I think on these three positions, what I'm hearing from, thank you, Council Vice President Friedson, what I'm hearing from my colleague, Councilmember Katz, and myself, I think holding one of these positions in the budget, eliminating the other two, and just making a note, Mr. Meade, that we will come back to the procurement, to the organizational chart when we're not in the midst of budget, go over how things are going, and discussing those things.
Which are the two?
I don't think it,
Well, there's
It doesn't matter.
right, it doesn't matter. We're cutting two.
Well-
In fact, I would take out the ones with the longest time on
Yeah.
their life cycle. So the first two, I guess, would go.
all right. So it's the three positions that are performance managed and data analyst 2. 118,724 is the lapsed amount, and two of those will be eliminated.
Yep.
Okay.
So they would keep one. And then I think it would be curious to come back after you've, the new, 8 new people and then have a conversation, because it would be interesting to see in which of the departments you would start first and have that conversation for next year.
All right. I'm supportive of the 2. I'd prefer 3. If you could reflect that in the packet, that'd
Yeah.
be great.
Sort of knew you would.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I appreciate it. It's almost as good as I would want
Right.
it to be.
So I think if that's the case, then the other positions we were talking about was and I think you discussed this before, Director Shetty, the principal administrative aide and the program specialist 2, were those the ones that were reclassified and filled for May 8th, or that's the one you're going out with now?
We're going to be advertising for an IT resource for for those 2 positions. So we'd be taking those 2 down and turning them into somebody who can help support. Because again, during COVID, we became an entirely paperless office. We receive solicitations now completely online. We process them electronically. We track and present them electronically. So what I've realized is that if we were to have failed, again, it's 3.5 years old, but we just didn't have the need for a traditional admin position in the office. What we needed was an IT resource, and what we've tried to do is combine 2 positions to create the money to hire that.
And is the note above that in the packet where there will be a savings of $76,029, is that because of this combination, or is that referring to
No, that's
something
actually referring to the procurement specialist 4 at the very bottom, which is the position that we did end up filling already, as in we've got a candidate who's ready to start. But since she's starting at a lower level than the specialist 4, which is the top of the pay scale there, that's where we realize those additional savings from.
Okay, so the bottom one we shouldn't discuss.
You shouldn't discuss it at all, not the second last one, because that has no money associated with it.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Is that position being reclassed?
The procurement specialist 4, well, it's part of a series, so they're just being brought in at the bottom of that series, and over the course of their career with our office, will work themselves to the top of that series.
So how it works in this series is that the individual comes in at the lower level of the series and they the position changes over time?
Well, they pass certain.
Where you have a certain number of certain level and people get promoted into different areas of the series?
Right. And then and it is a promotion that we have to discuss internally. It is, in fact, there are some external requirements to be certified by other MPIA and other groups. But once they meet those standards and are able to handle more complex solicitations independently, they would rise in their careers. But right now we are a very bottom-heavy group because, like I said, nearly half of my team was hired in less than a year. None of them have finished their first anniversary yet.
So next year, when we come back, is this going to be considered 76,000 in lapse? Or give or take, but,
It will still be, I mean, I don't know how much of a raise this person will expect to get over the course of that year.
You see what my problem is. You're like building in a cushion for a position that is listed at higher than the candidate that you have put in, and then every year this is going to be cushioned for lapse, which exacerbates the very problems that I have been talking about previously. We're going to trip over ourselves to give ourselves credit for finding savings in the budget, both on the executive and the legislative side of it. And the reality is we've just baked in a lot of extra breathing room for us to lapse.
No, so if what it's worth, if that were the case, then you'd see on here the remaining 8 people, or I guess, 8 people who also started at the bottom of the schedule, but who are replacing people in the middle or the top of that schedule. But we're not counting that as savings. We're not calling that lapsed. That is our budget. We're just living with
So
it.
even if we keep it at a procurement specialist 4, the budgeted amount will drop down to
Yes,
the level of
because-
what the salary is
Right, this
at
person
once
is
it's
gonna-
filled, but it's because it's not filled.
Right. To the top. I mean, in a decade, maybe if this person rises.
Yeah, sure, and we want room for growth for employees, that's fine. Okay, I just want to make sure that's why I asked the original question, that we're not going to come back here and we're going to say, give ourselves credit for
No, right, like-
finding $70,000 in lapse next year and $76,000 in lapse this year, when in fact we have found no savings
No,
at
just
all.
like we didn't get to call the savings from those 8 people we already hired at a lower level. That isn't anywhere in this document.
So then going back to the administrative aid and program specialist 2 that you combined and are about to go out
Yes.
for, to advertise for, are there savings there? No.
If there are, I guess there would be.
It's pretty lateral.
It's like, okay. Did you have questions on those 2?
Yeah. So you're combining
Yeah.
those positions and turning into more of an IT person, and understanding that this is, your office has gotten less paper and more technical and IT. But the combining of the 2 is a higher level person, and so that's why it's not really any, you're just combining the 2 positions. So you have 1 fewer position with the same give or take budgeted amount.
Right.
Okay, and you're recruiting that actively now?
We're in the process of doing the abolish and create, which is its own process with the Office of Human Resources. But we have abolished them as far as I know, or are in the process.
We're in the process, yeah.
Okay, and is there a timeline of when you think that person will be recruited and that person will be brought on?
From my perspective, I hope very soon, but then there's a whole mechanism that has to, there's, unfortunately, the back end of it has to be adjusted so that these 2 positions are one. And, we've never let our foot off the gas. We've never said, okay, it's okay, take your time. We keep nagging, but there's only so much we can do in terms of
Okay, well, I'm good with that. I think that makes sense to combine those.
All right, and then the last position on this chart is the procurement specialist 2.
Right. So, the procurement specialist 2 at the bottom was, the principal administrative aide and the procurement specialist, the program specialist. Did you say program specialist 2 or procurement specialist?
Procurement specialist, sorry.
So, am I mistaken? Was it the program specialist that was combined? Okay. So, and the program specialist is Grace's part-time. Okay. So, I might have, I had it marked here correctly, but I maybe spoke about it wrong. So, the principal administrative aide and the procurement specialist 2 were the positions that were combined.
Oh, that was probably my mistake, I'm sorry.
The program specialist that is in between those 2 is actually a part-time position and a position that we would like to use and it's a position that we've not advertised for yet, but would like to advertise for to help us with minority and local business outreach. So during COVID, rightly, we increased our emphasis on, we added the local preference points. We made all solicitations under $100,000 have to be advertised locally first. And then if no local vendors can take it, we go outside. But we've just really increased the burden on our local and minority programs. And again, it's good for the county, it's good for our economy. But what we wanted to do is use this position to help those two staffers who are currently managing that pool just be more productive. Their workload's gone up.
Yeah.
So is it envisioned as a part-time or a full-time?
Part-time.
It's part-time, and it will stay
And it'll just
part-time.
it'll stay part-time, and it'll just help two full-time people whose workloads will have increased.
And what does it mean to do outreach to local and minority
So
businesses?
it could be any number of things, but from the most basic things, like, I see you guys have a lot of opportunities for contracting, but I don't even know how to get certified as a minority business. Can you walk me through that process? And it takes time because you really do have to educate them on, for that business is very important. And we have videos and things like that we can point them to, but for some people, you do need that hand-holding. It's staffing events that we can attend in person. There are many minority or just business trade events around the area where we staff and talk to businesses one-on-one. We host open houses where we get about 40 people every month who attend those, but many of them will then have follow-up questions for our staff. Just, hey, you said this, can you explain to me where I can find it? This part-time person can help take on some of that administrative work when it comes to helping out.
Got it, okay. Well, I'm comfortable with that.
And I believe my office held an event at Montgomery Hills, and procurement came to work with a lot of the small businesses. And we really appreciated that. So I think this is, we've heard a lot from our small businesses, and particularly the minority-owned businesses, that this could be very beneficial. So I'm supportive of that.
Yep.
As well. Great. I think that's it for your budget. Thank you. We appreciate all of you. As Councilmember Katz said, we do think the procurement department is doing an excellent job, and we appreciate you going through this in so much detail, given the budget that we're going through right now. So we very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Could I just offer a thought about the organizational chart that Councilmember Friedson mentioned? It might be a useful thought to ask the Office of Legislative Oversight to update a report they did 16 years ago, which was called Inventory of Internal Service Functions performed by 5 county departments. They'd taken 5 of the major departments that are primarily, in a sense, competing with or complementing with central functions. There were police, fire, DGS. It used to be called Public Works back then. IT, who am I missing? I'm missing a couple. And they looked at 3 functions, HR, IT, and procurement. That was a very useful report for the council back in 2007. It may be that in order to have the discussion that Councilmember Friedson is suggesting, you could have that discussion around an actual report that would make sense from a kind of a logical point of view rather than a budgetary viewpoint only. Just a thought.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Great. Thank you very much.
You think things have changed in the last 16 years? That's your point on this whole thing?
All right.
I also said you're doing a great job. Just to be clear.
We didn't even hear you.
All right.
Lost in the other comments.
So thank you, Mr. Mia, for joining us this morning. So we will now go to the Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions, TEBS, and I appreciate your patience today. Well, we started off with procurement. Right. Everyone here? All right. Dr. Treyas, let's start.
Yes, I'll be asking our CIO, Gail Roper, to make some introductory remarks. But before then, let me just brief you on a process point. Councilmember Friedson also serves on the Economic Development Committee. I'm sorry, you were there and listened to the discussion. I apologize. But the Economic Development Committee was given the task to review certain TEBS and cable budget items It was agreed that this review would be simply to recommend to you specific actions, and that they would not have budgetary authority over the items they reviewed. So there is, the meeting happened after this packet was produced. There were two issues that they reviewed. One was the digital equity item, because it seemed to be a good candidate for external-facing technologies, as their mandate is, and they endorsed the efforts of TEBS in this area to you. Secondly, they were given a new budgetary item, which was added, and you'll be seeing it in detail, which is a new county website for $1.5 million. A vote was taken, and that vote was either 2-2 or 3-1, depending on more information that one of the council members sought from TEBS. That meeting, I don't think, has happened yet. Am I right, Director?
We have to reschedule.
It was rescheduled. So we're not sure exactly whether the vote was to vote for 3-1 to make it a high priority, or whether it's to have a 2-2 vote between priority and high priority. So there was some deliberation there. There was not a uniform discussion and a uniform commitment.
So we're voting on that.
You're voting on it. Their vote was simply to recommend to you.
Their vote was recommended to our committee, and our committee gets to recommend to the full council.
Exactly, exactly,
That's the, yeah.
exactly.
That's what I said.
With that as a background, I think we can step through the position discussion, the racial equity and social justice discussion, and the detailed budget that you have in front of you in whatever order you'd like. And Director Rober, perhaps you'd like to make some opening remarks.
Certainly. I really wanted to focus in on the racial justice equity conversation. I say not only my career, but I also believe that the TEBS organization is a grassroots organization. We have a significant amount of our resources focused on not only gaining grant money to bring in technology to the community, but also to do outreach in the community. So I wanted to make that clear. We did meet with Tiffany and her team yesterday to talk about where we went wrong, I think, in the process, rather than the work. So work is being done. I think that there was some confusion about how to fill out the forms and make certain that the work we are doing is recognized, and so that we can get that score. We had a good conversation, very positive, and then she and I talked one-on-one on how we go forward. So I just wanted to make that clear, that it's not that we're not doing the work, it's that we have to do a better job of reporting it.
Director, if I could just ask one question. Does TEBS have a core lead on racial equity right now?
Yes.
Okay, you do. Okay.
Yes.
And then you've been working with Tiffany Ward. So I'm glad you had that meeting yesterday. She was before us on Monday, and when we talked through some of that. So we would look forward if you could keep this committee updated on how you're moving forward on that. I think that would be very helpful.
Her major recommendation was for us to tell the story. And I said, Tiffany, we're so busy doing it, we
Yep.
do need to learn how to do that more.
Great. Before Director moves on, does anyone have any other questions on the racial equity statement? Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the update on that.
My recommendation is to simply go through the packet, paragraph by paragraph. You see my summary recommendations on page 2, but let's go through, starting with high-level observations and then individual program reviews. And my first opening comment is that this packet indeed does have an organizational chart, and maybe that's where to start, because you'll know where the investments are being made. It's on Circle 9, and you see there are 4 big boxes in addition to the CIO office box itself. Office of Broadband Programs and Infrastructure Modernization, Office of Strategic Partnerships, Office of Digital Transformation, and Office of Public Safety Programs and Regional Interoperability. You see the resource people that Director Roper has at her disposal to run these boxes, and these are new boxes. The prior organizational structure was very different, in my opinion, and these boxes are more aligned to how our residents, our businesses might look to an organization that runs the technology systems for the county. To Councilmember Friedson's point, there are several organizational units within our county government that also provide IT services. And that was the OLO report that tried to kind of see, are there opportunities for re-engaging the entire department kind of cadre in a discussion of how shall we organize for IT investments. It's a difficult and long-term discussion, and I think Director Roper has already begun such discussions.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
What I did was to structure the reorganization in a way that is palatable to the resources that I have to do the work, but also where the dollars are. So my original thoughts were that we would begin by centralizing multi-million-dollar IT projects, projects that typically take 2 or more years, that are typically over $1 million, and to get those projects managed in a way that we are actually utilizing best practices. So in order to do that, we did create a project management office. There was not a classification for a project manager in the county as a whole. So we did reclassify 4 positions. Those positions will be posted as of tomorrow. And those positions are written in a fashion that we would hire people who have very strong project management skills, that understand risk assessment, that understand how to manage budgets and reporting on budgets, timelines, that there is governance around those projects. So the first phase is to centralize enterprise projects over, I put $500,000 to the centralized IT organization. In many instances, I can say that we were brought into those projects when some of them got in trouble, or they needed clarification on how to move forward. The other thing that we've done is around our network strategies. Part of that is because we've had to enhance our ability to manage how we do things technically because of cybersecurity. So basically, we need to have more control over how things are done from a networking, attaching to our network, being able to minimize risk as associated with cybersecurity, and having those things. One of the items that you'll see on our budget is for us to fund multi-factor authentication, which means having 2 ways to enter our network, having every user to have 2 ways to enter our network to make sure that we're identifying who that individual is, much the same as we do now with our credit cards and our email, our Gmail, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the budget items that you'll see listed as a high priority. Now, I can say that the organization has morphed. So a few years ago, when I came on board, of course, a lot of the IT function was maintenance. So I watched servers, I answer help desk tickets, we've morphed to a consultative organization. We're consulting with the organization in terms of how do you do artificial intelligence? How do we bring in ChatGPT and utilize it with our 311 call center to make our residents get better answers, to have less hold time? How do we manage our data? How do we store information? Mr. Webster here is actually taking data, as you know, from our data center to the Equinix data center in a way that protects our data from any hacking. We absolutely established the county's first BIA, which is a business impact analysis. What happens when we have a disaster? How do we recover? How do we bring people back in and pay vendors if we need to, or pay employees? How are we able to recover in the event of a catastrophic event? So we've done that analysis. We're now partnering with our emergency operations organization so they can gain from what we discovered. We have the first catalog of all the systems that the county has, whereas before we knew they were there, we knew they were somewhere, but we couldn't quite understand how we were storing information, and then also who are we interfacing with, the state, the feds. Well, the business impact analysis now has been completed, and that information is available to benefit the organization. So I guess the main point that I'd like to make is that it's not your old DTS. TEBS is a new organization. It's taken on more responsibility. We focus in on business needs, costs, minimizing costs. We haven't asked for any new positions, and we're utilizing the vacancies that we have. The challenge for us is a lot of the classifications for positions for IT were written 10, 15 years ago. So I can look at a vacancy and said, there's just nothing I can do with this, and it has to be reclassified. If I'm limited in terms of the numbers of vacancies that I have because of those classifications, it's difficult. IT positions are also paying more, so I'm in competition with the region. So, those things, being more specific about the skill sets that we need. What we're looking at now, as I mentioned, is IoT, Internet of Things. How can we better enable DOT or public safety or 311 to do a better job with technology, and what kinds of skills do I need in order for that to happen? So those are some of the challenges. We confer quite a bit with the Gartner Group on best practices. So we don't really always mimic what other municipalities are doing. Sometimes we look at the private sector and the advances they're making, the federal government and the advances that they're making as it relates to cybersecurity. So I guess I could say it's a moving target.
Mm-hmm. Right. Did you want to go through more, or?
No. I think you can open up for questions in terms of the individual departments that are presented. Mm-hmm. Then I think you should look at the position classification question through analyzing the vacancy table.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you, Director Rowe, for that overview, and we very much appreciate the organizational chart. I knew somebody had it this morning looking through this. So I guess one of the questions is just to get clarity on the number of vacancies you all have right now in your department.
Lenny, you want to speak to that?
Lenny Bautista, the manager for finance for TEPS. And we currently have 42 vacancies. So if you turn to page 7, that's where we outline our positions. And of those 42, we have and I'll just update that this was printed as of last week, and we do have some positions that are now being posted, as Director Roper said. So this has been updated, but as of last week, we had 12 in pre-development, 15 that we were working on developing the program position descriptions and job ads, 6 that were under reclassification, which have now been passed through reclassification and should be posted today or tomorrow. One was with HR with the recruiters to post. 4 were in active recruitment. One was under, one had interviews that were being scheduled, and one had a candidate that had been selected and an offer was pending, and then 2 positions had been filled of these 42 that we have identified.
So right now, there's really 12 in pre-development.
Correct.
Correct. And then above, we have how long each, you have had different positions vacant.
Yes.
Do you happen to know of the 12 pre-development ones, how long some of those have been vacant? And like kind of where are you with those positions?
So those positions we're calling pre-development because we are focusing on the positions that we're currently recruiting and developing. So some of those range from, I don't think, it was several years that they had been vacant.
Could I turn to page 10, circle 10? There's a detailed chart.
It doesn't, Circle 10 through 12 is really helpful, but it
Yeah.
doesn't designate, I think, as the chair was requesting, of which are in development,
Okay.
which are in pre-development, which have been recruited. It's just based on the days, and so I think,
Yeah.
I think we'd be interested in knowing how to match up this chart from the list of the numbers.
Yeah.
Hi, Allison Dollar, Chief Budget Officer. I noticed that in the packet too, and we were kind of talking how we can crosswalk our list to this. And so we can get this to you, but I can tell you this 3,000 day, that one is already filled or being reclassified. So we'll go through this list and we can provide that to you.
I think that would be helpful, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, first of all, appreciate all the work that you're doing. It's hard to change any department. It's really hard to change a technology department within a county or any type of, municipal government or even any large organization. So I appreciate the challenge of the work before you and all that you're doing. How many positions did you recruit and fill this fiscal year?
So
There are 42 positions open now. How many do we fill?
we've filled 13.
13.
Yes, and part of those were vacancies throughout the year, so so it wasn't necessarily the 42, it's been
Sure.
positions where we've had a couple retirements, and we've filled those positions.
How many of those were positions that you were backfilling somebody who left? A couple like 2 or a couple like a few?
Two, I
2?
believe.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
So 11 net positions that you have recruited, vacancies last year that have been filled.
We've also done some contractor conversions. So what we're trying to move away from are contractors who have been contractors with the organization for a decade. So that's some of what I recognized as we began to look at our strategy around contractors. So we're doing that as well.
Appreciate that. Well, a couple things. One, I think a pre-development in vacancies, like all of us are in pre-retirement. Like of course, that is the next step to being filled, is that, they're pre-development and they're in development and then they're recruited. But it seems unlikely to me that a pre-development position at this point, given all of this year, you've been able to fill 11 net positions with 42 vacancies in the department. I think you're rightfully focusing on the ones that you're focusing on now, but the likely chance that you would be able to go beyond that. I think it's going to be ambitious to come even remotely close to filling everything that's in development and beyond. You're going to have additional, we're going to be adding to this challenge, not taking away from this challenge. There are going to be retirements and people are going to move on to other opportunities. I think in your department probably as much as any, because of how competitive this field naturally is. And, we have limitations on how much we can pay people, and technology pays people a lot in other areas and other arenas. So I really do think we ought to look at the pre-development positions and whether or not those are, ones that we should be funding in this budget, and what should stay in the budget. think we should really think through that. And then I would be interested in just understanding in terms of the 15 positions in development and project description, the 6 reclassifying. I mean, those are similar categories. Some you have to reclassify to get, but they're kind of all in development, right? So you basically have 21 positions that are either ready to be recruited with project descriptions and recruitments, or that are being reclassified so that you can put the project description together to get them out. Is that right?
So just to clarify, those 6 that were under reclassification, we received notice this past week that they've been approved by OHR, so those are being posted this week.
Okay, so those are in development too.
And I just want to note
Active, would you consider those then, sorry to interrupt, would you consider those active recruitments then now?
that, yes, because
Okay.
they're being posted.
So there are now 10 active recruitments? Correct. Great, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
So I understand, 10 positions is a lot, or 13 within the past year. But just to clarify where we were, the first quarter of FY23, we were asked to halt recruitments, and then we were asked to put all of our positions within a tier. So then we were only allowed by OHR to submit a certain portion, and I think it was tier 1s that were submitted at that point. So we didn't have, and we had 1 active recruitment in the first quarter of FY23. So the majority of our positions, 10, have been filled within the past 6 months. So we're ramping up, right? We now have a new HR liaison with HR working with us, so we have 2 currently working, and so we've been ramping up in terms of being able to fill our positions quicker.
So I think that the latitude that we really need is to continue to move forward. Anything that would keep us, we're catching up based on circumstances that we had no control over. So we more or less waited in the wings until we could begin to do that recruitment. I will say that our collaboration with OHR is very good. We've made record time in reclassifying positions, but it's difficult. So, what we're asking really is in our process of restructuring and modernizing the IT organization and the benefit of the county, that we have some latitude in these vacant positions.
How much money is associated, how much budgeted money is associated with the 12 pre-development positions?
Yeah.
And how much of that has already been assumed as lapse?
We can provide that information with you when we provide the status of each of these in this list.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to cross-reference those charts, the amount of money is budgeted, the amount of money total, and the amount of lapse already assumed, because you as a department are assuming a certain number of lapse based on certain positions. So, I appreciate that. I mean, I would like for us to dig into that. I'm not ready to make a decision on what we should do with these personally, because I think we do need to have that position. I will just say, I think you need latitude, but I also think we have to be realistic of what you're capable of doing. I mean, 30 positions already is a lot. It'd be triple what you did last year, even if you doubled the rate that you're at now, which seems reasonable if you've only really been actively recruiting in fairness for half a year. That's 20. 20 plus any additional ones that you have would, I just think we ought to take a look at that personally. I had one question about the chart as well. The chart on 10 circles 10 to 12. There are certain positions that are associated with negative days vacant. To me, I guess pre-development, like pre-retirement, negative days to me seems like filled. I just want to understand what that means.
So my understanding is that there was an error in an earlier version of the chart that was shared with council that had, it was off by, I think, 26 days, and that may be what we're seeing there.
So 2 is really 24 days vacant.
Right.
At least at the time of publishing of the report, and the 19 is, got it, okay.
One other thing OMB would like to mention, and for the record, Seamus McNamara representing OMB, is that traditionally TEBS has relied heavily on their personnel component to pay for a lot of the contractors. What OMB has been seeing them do is successfully convert over to full-time employees, and that's resulted in significant savings. The NOC conversion, I believe, was about $500,000 in savings compared to having them as contractors. And we're seeing them successfully start to make that transition. They really do need the flexibility, and they've been forced to absorb a number of positions from the cable fund recently. So just because they have that those vacant positions doesn't mean it's not paying for something else that TEBS absolutely needs to do right now.
Well, if you could share that with, sorry.
Yeah, no. I wanted to pick up because that was the next thing, not to add another layer of complexity on this, but in looking at the cable fund report and TEBS and realizing that we're moving positions from the cable fund over to TEBS, but that the money is now coming from general funds.
Correct.
And so I did request some information that was sent last night. Can we just talk about that impact that is having on our general funds as we move things that had been funded through the cable funds over to TEBS and now are being taken from general funds?
Are you all clear on what is happening with the reduction in the?
Yes,
I
think we are. I think we're all very clear, unfortunately.
And not shocked.
No. And understanding that this has been a conversation that has happened and what we're seeing, but I do think it goes to the point of staffing and how we're funding positions. And I think it's a conversation we have to have, particularly in this budget, to understand that positions that had been funded under the cable funds and for very good reasons can no longer be there, are now being absorbed by TEBS, but that means that's also a drawdown on our general funds. Yes. And what impact is that having?
So you want to speak to it, Seamus?
Sure. So, as we know, the cable fund revenue is dropping by, I believe, half over the next 8 years is what the current projections are showing. The decision was made to have TEBS absorb all of the positions out of the FiberNet program. It was, about $600,000 for this year without any additional funding given to offset that. And I know that was cause for concern from TEBS. I know Allison was not my biggest fan for a little while when we told them that they had to absorb these positions. But the reality is that there are much more to come over the years to come because the cable fund is not stable. We need to find ways to generate more revenue for it, and we need to evaluate what is funded within it, because for so long it has been considered almost a slush fund for different programs in the county. When it was flush with revenue, we could afford to pay for every variety of program we might want out of it, and that's just not the case anymore. And we're using it to fund critical systems like FiberNet, so that's one of the first programs we're looking to shift. And of course, there are complexities there due to the way the funding is structured. We've got different types of funding coming in with PEG grants that are restricted uses. So for the way we move things out will depend on how much revenue we have coming in each particular category. Hopefully that provides.
I think maybe it's kind of difficult to look at the big picture, but I think that the big picture discussions that we have to have is around monetizing FiberNet. Mm-hmm. That we need to, talk about what we can and can't do, and figure out a game plan, because there's really no going back. And many municipalities that had cable-funded broadband networks have moved away from that funding for years. So I think that is the elephant in the room, mm-hmm. to be honest. The other thing that I would say is that TEBS, the DTS organization, really utilized vacancies and sometimes the cable fund to pay for things because that funding was there. Now that it's no longer there and not coming back, that we have to have a full strategy. And I think we need to talk about that and work on that and present that to the council.
We also started absorbing positions in this current fiscal year because we had retirements for individuals that have been with the county for 30 years. So we had some savings there that we could utilize. And we're partnering with OMB, like if we needed some funding, that they would work with us. So we're doing our part to, broach this declining revenues and knowing going forward, we're going to continue to absorb positions. And we just want to be thoughtful about it.
Yeah, because I think when I asked this question, I can't remember who provided it, but it was closer to, I think, $800,000 that you all were absorbing, and a lot of it was the FiberNet operations in the different positions. I think since we want to do some more follow-up on those 12 positions, maybe providing us with more information on what you are absorbing from the cable funds, in what you absorbed this year and then what you're projecting in the next budget year, I think would also be helpful for us to get a full picture of, what's being handed to you, and then also what these vacant positions are.
And we'll provide a list of contractor conversions too that we have done and what we plan on doing with some of these pre-development positions. We just haven't gotten to it yet. So we'll provide all that to you.
Yes, appreciate that. A really important line of conversation. We've been, kind of broaching this subject without actually having the conversation about the cable fund for years. And, this snowball has been heading down the hill for a while, and eventually, we got to come up with a plan, and, I think you're going to need to be in the lead of figuring out, what makes the most sense based on the changes that you'd like to make. But obviously, we need to be a part of that decision because there are major fiscal impacts to that the council and this committee in particular needs to be part of. I appreciate the follow-ups. I was going to ask similarly. I just want to just fine-tune when you come back on the conversions of, what of those were the 10 positions that were recruited, how many of those were contractor conversions, or the contractor conversions separate from that? I'd just like that to be clear for us to really understand as we get a sense of, what capacity we have to actually bring people on over the next fiscal year. And also, what does absorbing mean? We use euphemisms. I want to be specific. Is absorbing meaning that we're cutting into the laps of the 42 vacant positions?
Yeah. Well, we are using funds from vacancies that have occurred between the beginning of the fiscal year and now, unplanned vacancies. We are just cutting back on spending in certain areas to ensure that we can fund. And we're just being proactive in ensuring that we have the funds to fund these positions. So. Right. And that's when OMB has agreed to work with us. Should something come up where we do require funds, which happens a lot, that they would, work with us. But
yeah, I appreciate that. This is the reason why I think these conversations about laps and really diving into the details of them are so important in vacancies, because it is allowing us to avoid making the tough decisions. And we have been using this as a cushion, as a county government and within individual departments, to basically gloss over what are systemic fiscal challenges. This is a systemic fiscal challenge. It's not your fault. It's really none of our faults. The world has changed, and we were relying on something that no longer is happening. You say the same thing about PLDs, parking lot districts, right? We used to rely on the revenue from parking. Well, we want fewer people to drive cars, and that means that fewer people are going to pay for parking, and so that funding is not going to be there. And we have to plan for those changes. These aren't bad things, but they are changes. And I think as we have this discussion, as you come back to us, we really need to think through that question of laps, because eventually, like you're being caught with the hot potato right now from the cable fund, we're going to have to deal with these issues so that we don't dump something onto you or another department that they just can't handle. And eventually, and I think sooner rather than later, particularly, if we move forward with a budget that looks similar to what the county executive handed to us, it's going to be a lot sooner than we'd like to admit.
The only other comment I would make is the decline of the cable fund, but it's also almost a decade or so of a lack of investment in technology for an organization that supports the entire organization, including fire, police, Montgomery College, the schools. So we have to factor that in, and that's been one of my biggest challenges is how do you shore up and do the kind of work that is expected of us. So the lapse in positions has kind of been a slush fund to fund tech. We weren't using it to have parties. We were actually using it to fund technology. So keeping that in mind.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And let me just start out and say, Ms. Roper, very publicly, I am so impressed with you, and you know that. We've had private conversations as well as for you, and for your entire team. You, in many cases, got an organization that was a fixer-upper. I mean, we can say it in any way we'd like, but that's true. And resources are so very important to get this job done, especially in your organization. And in many cases, you've been in a purgatory. You've been told you can't hire this, but you got to have that, and monies aren't there, but monies need to be there. I mean, we need to, as Vice President pointed out and the Chair pointed out, we need to face the reality. And I think that you are. And I think we need to face that reality, but keep in mind, we need to provide the necessary resources so that you can do your job. When you talk about contractors, and I know we're going to come back to this, but when you talk about contractors, the county saves. If you can get employees rather than have contractors, the county saves. The employee many times is receiving a better salary if they can come and work for the county and with benefits, et cetera, and still be better off. But we need to communicate it. We need to advertise it. We need to get those folks here to be there. So I think that we do need to have a deeper conversation. But I think you and your entire team have certainly brought us to the spot, to a better spot than when we've had in years. And I applaud you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz. So I think we'll put a pin in on the vacancies and the staff moving over from cable funds. And then I think we had a couple of questions that council staff asked us to get direction on, and so we'll return to those now. The first one is the website initiative, which is $1.5 million. The recommendation from council staff is a high priority. If you would like to tell us more about that.
So it is a 12-year legacy website. With the work that we're doing around data, being able to analyze data, being able to provide answers to our residents, the current website is not equipped to do that. The other aspect of it is that there isn't a real good governance model around the current website. So we patch it, certain pages by request. But right now, it's very difficult to get clean queries. If you run a query against the website, you get a lot of stuff, the garbage in, garbage out adage. So what we're wanting to do is, first of all, to make it more resident-centric. We're doing some analysis to better understand who's accessing that website and how often. We've found that 60% of the individuals that access the website today are on mobile devices. We have to make the new site more conducive to what it looks like when I'm on my mobile device. We have to have some sort of cadence around the data in the website and making sure that it's expunged as it should be, who's doing that. So it's not just the technology. Part of it is the governance, and we're looking at re-engineering the way that we do things today. The other part of it, I think, clearly is it needs to be in the cloud. And we need to have some of the services, honestly, that are being done in departments need to be automated, so less of a manual process on. And then what I think is extremely important, and that's the look and feel of the website. It needs to look like Montgomery County. It needs to look modern. It needs to depict all of the amenities that we have as a county. It just needs to have a better face. So those are some of the things that this new website will give us. And I think it'll give us an opportunity really to better understand what kind of information residents are wanting to get from the website going forward.
Thank you. And I know, having particularly under COVID, spent a lot of time on the county website. Some days it was very frustrating because I knew the information was there and I just couldn't find it quickly. I think, and I do want to echo what Councilmember Katz said about the excellent job you all are doing, and I really appreciate the reorganizing and your presentation on that. I guess my question would be, as you're doing that and the fantastic work you've been doing now, is this next fiscal year the year to take on the website reorg, or is it better to continue with your organizational changes?
So we have, the website is out for RFP. We have advertised, we've done analysis to determine what we're looking for from a vendor. We had to do a local advertisement based on procurement policy first. It has been advertised nationally. We're ready to go. We're ready to move forward on the work around the new website.
Okay. Council Vice President Friesen?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused by the timing here. So there's an RFP out for a procurement of a new website for a cost that we haven't appropriated the funds for. I'm just trying to understand the timing and the process here. Normally, we appropriate the funds and then it gets procured.
It is confusing. I think the key is that in order to know certain things about what we're moving to do, we have to ask questions. And the best way to do that for us is the analysis, and then we hope sometimes that these expenditures are passed through the council. There's a way to back up if we need to back up, but we are certainly ready to move forward. The process of estimating these projects is challenging because you have to have a number in order to put it in the budget, and sometimes that number is right on point, and sometimes the number is an estimate. Typically, what we'll do is we'll go to maybe the Gartner Group, or we'll look around at other municipalities to determine. I think we looked at the state of Maryland and their new web initiative, or the web initiative that they just completed. I think the site is up and running to determine, but it is a guesstimation to a certain extent.
Well, from a process standpoint, I'm not terribly comfortable with the idea of us, coming in after procurements happen to appropriate funds. I just want to make that clear. I personally, it sounded like the chair was mentioning kind of getting the house in order. There's 42 vacancies in this department. It is a critical department. We have huge technology needs and massive undertakings that we're asking you to take on. To me, in the context of having to make tough choices of services where we're not going to be able to provide services to everybody who need them, I personally think waiting on the website is reasonable. So, I think, we have to make some choices here. I mean, I think it would be helpful for us to understand, what the plan is for what the website is intended to accomplish. I mean, I actually think websites are being leaned on less and less, and apps and other uses on mobile are being used more and more. I mean, if it's the centerpiece of all the other more proactive things that we are doing, that's great, but I'd like to personally have a better understanding of that. I think, getting the 311 technology and the artificial intelligence that you are working on separately, to me, seems like, more of a priority.
Website data and the 311 data are interoperable. So the website, so part of the challenge is having these disparate systems. And what we're working towards is having data available. So the data from the website, the data from the 311 call center is resident data. It is the two places you go to understand what residents are wanting to know or wanting to have access to for the county. I would just emphasize how important I think it is to move forward on this website for lots of reasons. And I also believe that the whole concept of data management, being able to get analytics from data in order to make even budget decisions, I think is imperative. And we haven't been able to do that in the past. So the website, I believe, is extremely high priority, not only for internal county departments, but also for our constituents. And its services.
The 311 system, we talked about it, I guess, a week or so ago at this point. The 311 system is moving to the artificial intelligence that you talked about. That seemed to be unrelated to this procurement, because that's already moving forward. But I guess eventually it could be interoperable, because they're not the same. I mean, it's not like one relies on the other from a process standpoint, but you're saying that the data that the website would help to gather would help.
Absolutely. It tells a story. So the data that the interaction between the website and the interaction between the 311 call center, it's residents looking for county services. If I'm on the website, I'm looking for information. I'm looking for, as an example, during COVID, I'm looking for COVID information. A lot of the COVID data was both on the website and on the 311 KPAs. So basically, when we think about data, it shouldn't be a wall of data here, a wall of data there. It should be what we call a data lake, where all of the data intermingles, and we can actually extract data, and that's what AI is all about. AI will allow us to go in and extract data. And when you're asking us questions about planning, when you're asking us questions about, how many residents are interested in X or Y, we're able to get that information from gathering data from the data that is available to us as a county. It shouldn't be separate, and I don't think we'll accomplish our efforts towards being able to have good data analytics if we continue to piecemeal it. We are moving forward again on I mentioned the last time I was here that we are moving forward on the CRM 311 initiative as well.
Appreciate it. I admire your vision and your ultimate goal. I'll just personally say, I mean, this budget is trying to do everything. And we're asking taxpayers to pay a 10% property tax in order to do that. And I do think while we're doing that, we're also saying certain services can't happen. I think some things are going to have to give. So my personal view is I think the website can wait a year. I'd love to see how the 311 piece works, and improving on it with better inputs from a new website. I'd love to see 42 vacancies, or 30 of the 42 even, get filled, and to show that we're on the way. I'd love to have an understanding of what this reorganization is going to look like, what the transition from the cable plan and what the department is absorbing. I'd love to have a better understanding of how using agencies and centralized departments are going to interface, because I don't think that has been looked at in a systemic or, thematic or strategic way in a very, very long time. But, I'll yield to colleagues, but that's where I'm at.
I believe that the website is part of the communication that we need to have. And I believe that the faster we can do a better job communicating, the better off we are. So I'm not in favor of holding it up.
Oh, man. I hate being in the middle.
Powerful chair.
It is. Thank you, Director Rover. Your description was very helpful. If I could ask another question on what we talked about regarding 311 and moving that forward, and understanding this is not my field. So if I ask a ridiculous question, bear with me. I hear the part about the data and the sharing of data. Are there efficiencies of scale and potential cost savings by undertaking what we're doing on 311 and the website redevelopment at the same time?
I believe there are. I believe that automation, in some instances, will allow us to reassign individuals to do other things that need to be done. I think that part of the cumbersome process of our current website, as an example, is that it is being done in a piecemeal fashion, and that some of if we get the right vendor, some of the maintenance on that website will become automated. As an example, if I want to extract data from the website from 1999, believe me, there is data out there that's fairly old, to 2002, that I would be able to do that in an automated fashion. AI will help with that. So yes, the other thing that I believe as it relates to 311 is that I think the impact there is going to be dramatic, particularly as it relates to using AI. So I've seen just this week some presentations on how AI will benefit our 311 call center activities, and I can just say that it's incredible to see how, with predictive engineering, that we can point AI to information and get answers quickly. We can get links if someone is calling the 311 call center and they want to add a child to their benefits, because 311 takes HR calls as well. They not only get a process of how to do it. Step 1, you do this. Step 2, you do this. Step 3, you do this. They also get the necessary forms in that response for them to actually get what they need. So I have seen it in action. I wouldn't say we're struggling. What I would say is we're working very hard to get it right. We're taking into consideration some of the risk around AI. The thing that I believe will help us considerably is that we're not using ChatGPT like we use it on our phones. We're actually using it to point at our own data. So it's like having a fence around the data that you're utilizing, and part of the benefits, to answer your question, is that we can work with the 311 folks to make sure that the documents that they use for information are up to date and accurate, and test out how the artificial intelligence is being used. And it's not only being used in government, it's being used, as you know, in medicine, because of the high level of intelligence. So yes, I think more to come, and I think that the council should be asking those kinds of questions. And I believe strongly that we can respond to the kinds of questions that you're asking in terms of any total cost of ownership, any return on the investment that we make in artificial intelligence, in the website, in the 311 call center, because there will be productivity gains. AI is a disruptor for technology, and there will be productivity gains that I believe should become part of our performance measures, and I've discussed that with my staff, that the performance measures that we have on the books need to change as well. And I think a lot of that can answer questions even before you ask them of us.
Great. Well, I will say I came into this meeting probably closer to where Council Vice President Friedson was on the website, hearing the recommendation from the Economic Development Committee and knowing they're going to get more information in your presentation today. I think I'm agreeing with Councilmember Katz for the time being as we put it on the reconciliation as a high priority. Just seeing what you described as the interaction with the 311 work we're doing, because that is beyond a high priority for me on the 311. So
thank you.
All right. But we'll have more conversations because it gets a high priority in reconciliation doesn't mean. All right. The next item was the MF Customer Identity Access Management for $200,000. Do we want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, and just to focus the council's attention to the fact that TEB's budget is not only for TEB's internal purposes, it's to serve every single department we have with cybersecurity, with computers, with telephones, and their connection and safe use. This item is before you because it is a new cost item, and by council rules this year, we have to review it in detail. So I'm wondering if Director Roper or someone would explain, first of all, the importance of this item and why it's an addition rather than already absorbed in your existing budget.
So it is, I mentioned it early, 2 ways to enter our network. It's the multi-factor authentication, really is having an application that identifies anybody who is connecting with our network, both external and internal. We had a MFA in place that does not meet the needs of what has happened with cybersecurity today. It wasn't. I don't believe a full solution. It was a hand developed solution. So we're actually upgrading what we have, and these are licensing costs in order to do that. It's also interoperable with our platform, which is Microsoft, so that we can do it in a fluid fashion. The only other thing I would say about it is that in order to have the necessary cyber insurance that most agencies have, you have to have, it's almost like the underwriters will look at it and say, you don't have multi-factor authentication, it would be very challenging to get the kind of insurance that we have to have as a municipality.
Did you have anything yet? Or?
I just wanted to clarify, yeah, we're leveraging our Microsoft EA, and of the 200,000, approximately 50 is for licensing, and 150 is for a contractor to help, a short-term contractor to help build this in record time, because there's an urgency now to get this rolled out.
Yeah, appreciate this, and obviously the insurance and the cybersecurity elements of this are critical, and the licensing elements of it are really not an option and not a choice. So, I get that, but there's kind of multiple parts to this item, as far as I could tell. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. Some of it are devices themselves, right? What is the timeline that we have set for replacement of laptops and desktops, and then some of this is licensing, or am I not understanding that properly?
No, the licensing part is the Microsoft licensing for that particular product.
Right. So I'm saying it's all combined into one. Some of this is the life cycle that we have. You set a timeline for devices. You say if you get a county-issued phone or a county-issued laptop or a county-issued desktop, and then we put you on a timeline. We say, it's good for 5 years or it's good for 7 years, or, right? And replacing the devices is part of the cost here in this, or that's a separate line
It's
item?
in separate, yes.
So
This is just the licensing
This is
of the
licensing.
software.
for non-county employees, these are for the public to access our county websites. That's my understanding. This is as we're rebuilding or leveraging our Microsoft platform, this is what is required.
Okay, so I mean, the description, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. The device client management, that's what we're talking about.
No. The device type management is a separate NDA that you will take up in the near future. 3 items.
So how do we, so we're splitting it up, the devices and the licensing themselves?
Separate issue entirely. This is
Okay.
multi-factor authentication. It's
Right.
how all of us access the county networks. And we should be careful about how we discuss some of this in an
I wrote that note.
open setting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did write that note, that we really.
So this is just the software element to it with the multi-factor authentication.
Software.
Okay, all right. I'm fine with that, because I thought we were combined, because the way that it was described at one point, it sounded to me, at least listening in, that we were going into the next conversation. So I'm fine with this.
Great. Good. All right. So that's a good one. No, that's fine. I think, and then the next is just supporting the balance of the recommended budget. I think we're going to come back to the vacancies and other issues we're talked about in the next, hopefully, week or so, because time is ticking. And we discussed the racial equity and social justice performance, and then the last item, which I think if I might be getting confused now, the last item was to ask OMB to consider creating a new NDA for FY25 that consolidates all software, licensing, and other costs that are destined for all county departments' use.
I think you've done precisely that with your conversation.
Okay.
There is confusion. The current NDA is for hardware. We don't have a comprehensive NDA for software maintenance licensing. And it would be useful to have that all combined so that the GO committee could easily see what is being proposed.
That's what I thought we were getting at earlier, just to be clear, but yeah.
Okay. So, but that's for next year's budget.
And I would urge OMB to consider that.
OMB is happy to look into whether it will be a cost-efficient way to move forward.
Great. All right. Thank you for that. I think, Director Roper, I think you're in the hot seat for one more item, I believe. You stay here for the cable televisions and communications plan as well. But thank you. We really appreciate and look forward to the additional background. All right.
Perhaps I might also call to the table Barry Hudson is the chair of the Connect Montgomery Alliance.
Great.
Which is one of the major portions that is funded by the dwindling resources of the cable plan.
It's always been down when I came in this room. I've never been here when they've. Great.
There are two parts to my analysis for this item. One is the conceptual funding of the Connect Montgomery Alliance. You had scheduled for review their strategic plan for fiscal 24. That had to be shifted, and I thought might as well do a very quick presentation. I think there are about 7 slides for the plan. So you're under advisement as to how's the money currently used as we begin to shift out mission-critical kind of fiber net type operations. What remains primarily is the execution by the CMA. So I thought it might be a useful 5 minutes perhaps to just run through a small number of slides to remind you of the CMA's important work, and then we can look at some administrative issues and some increases and so on. Thank you.
Good morning. glad to be back after being here last week. But I did want to give you a quick overview of the Connect Montgomery Alliance. We do have some of the other members of our alliance here today. They're sitting behind me, and certainly are available to answer any questions that you have. As you can see on the screen, the Connect Montgomery Alliance consists of 7 local cable access operators, and they provide Montgomery County residents with easy access to engage in the government, education, and community events and news via cable, online, and social media platforms. The alliance includes Montgomery Cable, Cable Montgomery, Montgomery Community Media, Montgomery College TV, Montgomery County Public Schools TV, Montgomery Municipal Cable, Tacoma Park City TV, and Rockville 11. You can go to the next slide. One of the things that we focus on and what we've tried to do is to have pretty much a hyper-local connection to communities and to residents. One of the challenges we do face today as a jurisdiction, and it's affecting everyone, is the loss of hyperlocal news. There's just not that many ways to get news to people, particularly as it relates to the government. So CMA provides content that supports several of the countywide initiatives: public health, economic development, substance use awareness has become something far more recently, racial equity, public safety, education, affordable housing, and digital equity, just to name some. Many of the video programs are provided in 7 languages to reach a broad diversity of our residents. In addition to that, the multiple platform approach for the up-to-date news or information the county provides, including cable streaming as well as multiple websites. Community engagement is something we also are involved in through digital media, Facebook, and Instagram, and cable casting hundreds of virtual live meetings, town halls, etc., and also including public testimony and closed caption. Next slide, please. We play a vital role in the cable communications plan by creating content based on the needs of the community, sharing community messaging and educating the public on issues of importance, and providing, as I said earlier, that hyper-local coverage of what can't be found largely anywhere else. Next slide, please. One of the things, some of the things that we look at is providing access to county and municipal government through all the different channels. We try to collaborate to make sure that if there are really important things, that we simulcast them on all the networks, either replaying them on some of the other channels, just to make sure that we get that message out on multiple occasions to our residents. We want to keep residents informed through video and on multiple platforms. And we want to give residents a space to express themselves and to connect with the government. Next slide, please. We've done a lot of focus on social media, and we do that for a number of reasons. One, that way we're able to get to people directly, and it also allows us to get that message out there in a way that we can't necessarily do that through the cable channels. But the other thing that works for us well with social media is that it's measurable. It's a lot easier to measure. One of our challenges, and we just recently did a SWOT analysis, was the ability to get data back for the work that we do, and social media does allow us to do that. I don't have to read the numbers there for you, but we do have a considerable amount of combined followers across all our social media platforms, close to 250,000 people. We've seen a 300% increase in our reach to through both Facebook and Instagram over the past year. We do have some paid campaigns that we've engaged in. They've generated 1.8 million impressions and 150,000, almost 151,000 video views and a reach of 622,000. Next slide, please. One of the things that I think has really improved the work that we've done over the last year or so is the fact that we brought on a collaboration coordinator. We meet monthly and we talk about ways that we can work together, but one of the elements that we were missing was a person who was able to assist us on a regular basis to kind of keep us on track with a couple of things, making sure things that we discussed in a monthly meeting are followed up on and dealt with. In addition to that, keep us on track with our strategic plan. So we brought on that part-time position dedicated to communicating between all the organizations in the CMA. When I was here last week, I talked about the biweekly meeting of the PIOs. That individual participates in those biweekly meetings and coordinates with departments on helping to get coverage through the CMA network. The person also oversees our committees. We do have a committee structure that reports out every month and makes sure that the committees stay on task. And as I said, that person also assists with our strategic plan, our work plan, quarterly reports, and tracks the progress of each of those plans. The funding that's provided to us for CMA, we obviously receive through the cable communication plan, and it's vital in making sure that we have what we need to produce quality content, employ a talented staff, and to have proper funding for equipment and facilities. There has obviously been discussion about the decline in cable funding, and it definitely affects us. But what we've been able to do over the last couple of years is use our collective work to find efficiencies and things of that nature to get our work done. And we're aware of the decrease of funds due to people, as we say, cutting the cord. And in the process of putting together our CMA committee, we're looking at ways to specifically address this issue. And as I said, we're researching other sources of funding, grant opportunities, and we're looking for outside sources of revenue in the future. We'll be working with our analysts going forward to looking at this from our perspective in the larger sense of that as it relates to the reduction in funding. But that kind of gives you an idea of who we are and where we are right now. So we're certainly open to any questions.
If you have no specific questions about CMA, I'm prepared to do two quick requests of you to approve.
Okay.
The request number one is to approve the recommended cable plan. It is a reduction, and there are several things that are going on. You'll see some details when we have Director Roper come back about the transfers themselves. I think the county executive is this year finally making some bold and difficult moves away from the cable plan reliance. So my recommendation is to approve it, but I do have some concerns before you do that. If you turn to Circle 9 and 10, that's the proposed cable communications plan in detail. I don't expect you to read it or memorize it, but I want you to know that in this cable plan, there are multiple transfers and revenues coming in, transfers going out. But the bottom line is a cable fund balance. And the cable fund balance is almost at the end of the second part of the chart on Circle 10. A few lines above the bottom, it says fund balance. And I draw your attention to the fact that the fund balance has, in fiscal 20 was about $1.1 million, then $1.4 million. Then in the actual fiscal 22 was minus 95. It dipped into a negative territory. The expected estimated fiscal 23 fund balance is minus 98. And then finally, the executive is recommending in fiscal 24 to move it up to 117,000. The notion of a fund balance is important for any kind of, especially non-tax revenue monies that come into the county. And I wanted to engage you in a discussion of how do you perceive the question of a fund balance? OMB has some ideas, and perhaps, Seamus, you might want to share those ideas in terms of how do we set a fund? Is it something we set, or is it something that comes out of all the puts and takes that happen? And especially the negative fund balance is of concern.
So we are trying to avoid a negative fund balance going forward, but our strategy, and right now it's going to take a much longer conversation to figure out the best way to move forward, but our strategy is to limit the fund balance and to try to slowly pull things out of the cable fund over the next several years. I'm trying to pull up my spreadsheet that shows where we're going to be at. Right now we're targeting a nominal fund balance of under $100,000 over the next several years. Oh no, Joe, I was looking for the FY25 and beyond spreadsheet, which is not fully planned out yet, and that's something we want to engage with council on. We've discussed internally at OMB maybe having council put together an OLO or request an OLO report on what should be funded in the cable fund, so that we can determine what needs to come out first. One of the things we're thinking about is starting to pull out all of the FiberNet CIP money that is in excess of the PEG capital contributions to better allow us to monetize FiberNet sooner. Right now, one of the limitations on us monetizing FiberNet is the fact that we've used these PEG grants, which are restricted use only for public educational or governmental purposes. And that's a limiting factor for us to make use of this system that we've built over the decades that could be a net revenue generator. So it's going to be part of an ongoing conversation, and it's something that it's not for FY25 and beyond. We want to engage with council on this to figure out the best path forward.
Well, appreciate that. I think it's really needed. I also think, I agree on the FiberNet piece of pulling that out. I think that makes a lot of sense, and so I appreciate that happening as well. I think at a certain point we have to rethink this entirely. And we had a gravy train coming for a while, and it's up, it's over, and it's diminishing by the year. I mean, people are cutting the cord. The former system of cable monopoly or oligopoly, where local governments were basically in partnership with these private companies, is changing. The whole landscape is changing, and it's been moving really at a glacial pace. They've allowed us to catch up. We have kind of ignored it for a while. We've kind of talked about it, but been unwilling to make the changes. And so the ability to have different programs, I think we need to rethink whether or not decentralized is realistic, and whether or not we're going to be able to continue to do that, where every agency and entity gets its own individual department, and then it's all funded through this diminishing fund. I don't know that we can maintain that. And I just think we have to be honest about that, and we have to be sober and serious about that. And I think we need to start that conversation like a decade ago. And I was going to say yesterday, and Director Roper said yesterday, and then when I thought about it, I said, well, maybe it's even before that. But, so we're not going to decide it here. I'm fine with the recommendation, but I do think, we need to put a marker down, and everybody's got to joined together, because ultimately, if we don't do it, it's going to be really ugly in the end, because we're going to get to a point where either we're going to have to subsidize this fund to the tune of millions of dollars, cutting out of services, or, substantial tax increases or something, huge, or we're going to have to just let people go abruptly who are funded out of this program. Those are three terrible options that are avoidable if we think through it and, handle this in a thoughtful way. And we will have turnover, we will have retirements, we will have changes. And so we do have an opportunity, if we set up a plan over the next several years, that will slowly reduce our reliance on this cable fund. But, it's a game of musical chairs, and the music has been slowing for a long time, and eventually there's not going to be a chair for us to sit in, and we're going to have to figure it out. Director Roper?
So the comment I wanted to make about the elephant in the room and what you just talked about is that what we have done over the last few years under Mr. Webster's direction is we have taken that asset and made it a competitive asset. So our broadband infrastructure FiberNet is a carrier class network now. So it is as good as, not better, right, Joe, than a private sector. So we have this asset. So I think the conversation has to be around how we best use that asset. We know that we can use it as it relates to digital equity and lighting up underserved homes and some of the work we've done with Main Street and so on and so forth. But also, we need to find out if we can, and if we can't, why. And Seamus talked about, moving these funds around that takes out that portion of funding that may be a legal obstacle, and making certain that the remaining funds are allow us to do what we need to do. But it is complex, but I think the conversation has to start now.
And to be clear, so even under our current plan, we're still using PEG grants for FiberNet because we have more coming in for the PEG capital grants than we can spend on all of our other uses currently without having FiberNet in the mix. So it's part of a longer discussion, unless there are other things we could potentially fund other things with that, but then we need to fund FiberNet entirely out of general fund. And there's a conversation to be had with the county attorneys to figure out the best way to get us to where we can monetize FiberNet as well.
Yeah, I think there's two conversations that maybe they're related and maybe, frankly, they're not. I think we need to decide that. But, FiberNet is an asset. We've spent a lot of time, energy, resources, and talent to put that together. Are we maximizing the full potential of the asset and what we had originally envisioned? I don't think we have. I think there's tremendous opportunity. I appreciate that you're further looking into that. I think we should be a part of those conversations at this committee, I would hope. And, the second question is the cable fund, the future of the cable fund, the PEG operations and what we have done historically, and can we continue that? How? And how do we pay for it? And I think those are conversations that we need to not just say we need to talk about, we actually need to talk about them and figure them out. So I appreciate everybody's work on that.
Yeah, no, I say thank you, and I think this is something probably as soon as the budget wraps up that we'll come back to it, and I think it'll be multiple conversations in the future. So, but I think for the moment, for this operating budget, we're good moving forward. Yes? No other questions?
Yes.
All right. Good on that. And then I don't know who's staying for the device client management NDA. Yeah.
I think, Ms. Roper, you're staying for the DCN?
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hudson.
So hopefully the next three items will be briefer items because they're more focused.
Yeah.
If I can start the discussion, the device client management is what provides the hardware for our employees. Again, I emphasize not just TEBS employees, but this is for countywide use. My recommendation is to approve it as recommended. I raised a couple of questions on page 2 of my memo, and important to note that this is a contracted service, and the vendor has held the contract for 9 years, and the contract is being rebid. It's a competitive process. I was here, I think, when the current vendor was retained. It's always good to refresh and to see if we can drive costs per seat even lower. I think the director has done a great job of keeping those dollar amounts. I don't have anything more to add. I wanted to make sure that you understood the major elements of the DCM amount, and you see them on the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3. So my recommendation is to approve.
Question?
Yeah, so I thought originally the recommendation from item 1 was to include this into a broader NDA, so I just apologize for that confusion, because this is devices and some software, at least in the description it is.
Yeah, and just to
Some devices come with
right.
software.
So what we did is we moved the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement to be budgeted in the DCM because it's enterprise level support. I guess it's kind of just to make sure that we're tracking it separately.
Because each device comes with its own,
Correct.
you pay per device on the software license.
Correct.
You have a master license and then a per device, and if you hit a certain number, you hit the next. I mean, is that how it generally works?
Well, there are others that have per user, like Oracle. Oracle's its own
Its
can
own
of
beast,
worms.
yes.
But Oracle, Microsoft, they all have different licensing schemes.
Yeah, so in the spirit of Costas's recommendation to consolidate, create an NDA, we attempted to do that. Granted, we're commingling, device replacements for the enterprise, but we moved the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement into this budget as well because it is supporting the enterprise as well.
Got it. Okay. And then what is our assumption, like for laptops and phones and devices? I mean, this is assuming a certain number of years before replacement and then paying for those years. So if it's every 5 years, 20% of the workforce that gets a laptop gets a new laptop, and you have to fund that. What's that timeline?
Yeah, I believe in the 21 budget, we received a significant tranche of funding to achieve industry standards 5-year replacement cycle. So that's where we're at.
So when I came on board, we were in the red in terms of laptop replacements. So we shored up with the council so that.
2 years ago.
Yeah, it's 3 years ago.
Yeah. How long have I worked with you?
So it was a catch-up exercise, but we are at a 5-year refresh cycle now.
Okay, so 5-year refresh cycle, and so 20% get replaced, and that's what this reflects. And the funding of 13.8 million is the software contracts plus 20% of the devices being replaced. That's
In addition to the increase in our Microsoft EA. So, yeah.
got it. Okay, so you're assuming that the cost of the replacement of 20% of the devices will be more or less the same.
Yes.
Okay, and has that been consistent over the last 10 or 20 years that technology is getting better, so devices are actually getting cheaper? At least personal electronic devices actually are going down in cost, not up in cost. One of the few things where that's the case. And so is that
We do track it consistently. Yvonne, our One Face Forward chief who runs the device client management NDA, reports out pretty consistently and works with me, the budget team, if anything were to exceed what is budgeted. And what we're seeing is that we're fine at the levels that we're at.
got it? And then just curious, if we were to change at a future date, like to find cost savings, because I actually think we're setting ourselves up, we're going to have to make some huge cuts next year, maybe before then, to be honest with you. If we went to a 6-year replacement cycle, I understand we worked hard to get from a 7 to a 5, so you don't want to do that. But what amount of money would that be?
So,
Just out of curiosity. And I'm not recommending it here. I just think we ought to know what the cost is associated with the difference of a year replacement cycle.
yeah, we could look at that and bring that data back, but I think what we also need to consider is that machines start to fail, and then that drives certain costs up. So you have to do a cost-benefit analysis to determine if you're saving anything.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's fair. If it's not due for to come back to this committee, because I'm not going to recommend anything, but I think for our future understanding, as we have to take up some tough choices, and I think thanks to the county executive's budget, we're forcing ourselves into some very tough decisions coming very quickly. I think we're going to have everything on the table and understand what the cost benefit is. And if the answer, I hope the answer, and you're right, that the answer is it actually doesn't cost more or save anything to go beyond 5 years, because the failure rate of replacement is, and upkeep and all, and maintenance and all of that ends up.
Cheaper, but they're cheaper.
Yeah.
They're made cheaper.
Yeah.
And we were also able to benefit from federal COVID dollars, to supplant our DCM replacement cycle. So, yeah, so I think that is why we're still able to maintain our current funding levels, because of grant funding that we received from the federal government.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. All right, so this one's good. Moving on, and then the next item was the telecommunications NDA.
Yes, the telecommunications NDA, as you see, is decreasing. The major reason for the decrease is that we are finally migrating to the cloud in a forceful way. We started some 7-8 years ago, preceding Ms. Robert's arrival with the county, and it was going slow. But we now are almost complete, as you see in the answers that TEPS provided to my questions. By 2025, we should be formally and fully both cloud-based and software-defined telecommunication system. And at that point, we'll see a reduction in that budget. So we're on track, and my recommendation is to approve it as recommended, and it's reduced slightly because of some offsets. Good.
Good, good. We're good with that one.
Great.
Our last item is the Interagency Technology Policy Coordination Committee.
$3,000.
Yeah. Dr. Torregas, do you want to tell us where this is? And
Usually, these kinds of items don't come before you at
Right.
the cost level, but it's an opportunity, I believe, and continue to believe, in fostering cross-agency investments in technology. The reality is that the current chair of the ITPCC, which is always a tongue twister, is the CAO of Montgomery County. The CAO of Montgomery County has not been able to hold a meeting of the policy committee of ITPCC, so therefore the CIO subcommittee, which is part of the ITPCC, has basically done business as they see fit through bilateral meetings rather than collective meetings of the entire agency. The reason it's before you is because it was created by council resolution some 25 years ago. So let me be clear. It may be that this function has outlived its course, and it's time to simply rescind the resolution and move on. On the other hand, I personally believe that there's no better time when we're looking for budget improvements to look across agencies in this practical scenario of technology sharing and technology adjustments and technology improvements. For example, one of the reports that came out of ITPCC 10 years ago was replacement of computers. And how is each agency doing it? How many years? What are the costs? Can we buy together? And so on and so forth. So the benefits of ITPCC, to say nothing about FiberNet, which was created by a multi-agency group, but guided by and led by our now called TEBS. It's my recommendation to continue to encourage the executive branch to assemble it, but perhaps the GEO committee could take a stronger role in that. So my recommendation would be to continue, but if there's no interest in this, the executive branch has signaled that there is no interest in this. As you see from the answers to the questions I posed, it's perhaps time to say goodbye.
thank you. Dr. Reyes. Dr. Roper, do you have any thoughts on this?
I would just say that it was created 28 years ago.
Some 20-some years ago.
Yeah, and I would like some time just to make it a priority for me to best understand Dr. Torregas and the value add, because there's so many things happening that, another, we've devised some other communication mechanisms to have that cross-functional discussion, but at this point, I would just like some time to study it more and have some additional conversations with Dr. Torregas about value.
Yeah. I have that.
Yeah, I mean, for $3,000, we can.
Right.
I think it's like to reimburse for
And 10,000.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see a value in, as Dr. Torregas talked about, in what this was set out to do. I think, Director Roper, as we've talked about this morning, and we really appreciate all of your time this morning, is the excellent job that you all have been doing in reorganizing TEBS, rethinking it, and so having your expertise and input on whether or not this body should push the county executive's office to reinstate this and get this up and running, I think would be invaluable. So I'm happy to wait on that.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, I think we either need to use this in a way that Dr. Torregas sees the value in reimagining or revisiting, or we should get rid of it and do something else that replaces this function. It seems that we seem to have a lot of new efforts to accomplish the things that we had, but we don't necessarily get rid of those or change those, and I don't think it's been used in the way that it was originally intended to serve, cross-functional, cross-departmental efforts to bring the senior leadership together to talk at a strategic level of technology integration, cost savings, efficiencies, better service providing to residents, et cetera. So I think understanding the historical perspective, but bringing your new perspective and the changes that are happening would be very helpful. And I think, ultimately we could, want to be your partner in figuring out how to best do that.
Yep. Great, awesome. Well, Dr. Torregas, thank you so much for preparing the packets today, for that excellent work. And again, thank you to all of you for your excellent work, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
for your time.
Thank you. And we are done. Till tomorrow.